ESPN1420 and .com, Ragin Cajun head coach Tony Robichaux is our guest on the show this afternoon. One of the things that we witnessed really throughout the season, it wasn't just in the postseason, but especially in the second half of the season and then through postseason, were the number of former players who came back to Teague Moore Field. Some of them we've seen a lot over the years. Some of them we haven't seen at all. I wish I had a list of everyone who's worn a Cajun uniform that happened to be at the ballpark at some point in time during the season. Tony, we're talking about hundreds here.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, even on the road, I mean, from Justin Hemme and all the players that we would see in the certain areas that we were at, they knew we were there. And so it was really great. And I think a lot of it is, again, when you get some guys that are willing to back up the name on their jersey, those guys, I think, have something in common now, because at one time they wore the same name across their chest. And so and that's what this team, I think, did. It brought back so many former players, so many guys that were competitors and warriors when they played. And that was a great appreciation for our players to know that many former players were there and that we're backing them as they were playing.
I visited last week with Scott Doman here, and also talked to a couple of other players during the time over at the ballpark. One of the things that happened through all of this is they got to see teammates that they haven't seen since they finished playing themselves. You know, Scott talked about a couple of guys on the 2000 team he hadn't seen that he got to see
Will Hawkins
over the weekend. And, you know, that was the other great thing about the success of this team, is the way it kind of brought back the history of this club and maybe rekindled some relationships.
Oh, it did. I mean, it brought a lot of guys back. You know, so many guys, believe it or not, when you talk to players, you know, when they finish, nothing else gives them that type of feeling. You know, they can't find that anywhere. And it takes them a while, you know, to even be able to come back, because it's hard to come back. We have to start again next fall. You know, some people, and then the guys that go on to play pro ball, sometimes they'll come out of pro ball hardened over the game because it's so tough. And like TJ Geith one day, you know, this year was put on the Phantom DL and then released the next day. You know, well, when you leave, sometimes you can be hardened at the game, and it takes them a while to come back. And it's nice when something does bring them back, because once they come back, I mean, Will Hawkins came back, and I mean, he had to leave on you know, I believe it was Sunday after the game, and I mean, he was still in the clubhouse talking to us at midnight, and he had to drive all the way back to Houston, you know. So once they get back, you know, all those memories, I think they come in. Some of them came in to go look for their locker and all that stuff. So it's good. It was really an honor and a privilege to see so many of those guys come back.
You had 7 players that were drafted. Ole Miss had the most in the country. They had 9. I think there were 5 schools with 8. You were one of about a half dozen schools with 7. That beats, I think you had 6 in the 2000 ball club. And so that this is the most ever. Carson Baranek today announced that he had come to terms with the Dodgers. And I think that takes care of all of them. Am I missing someone, or have all 7 come to terms now?
Well, I don't know if Seth has come to terms yet, but I think he will.
Mm-hmm.
He will.
He was of course, the highest drafted of all the Cajuns at 7th. Now, I'm not going to ask a lot of questions about individual players, because all of that stuff's their business. But as somebody who went through it as a coach and went through it as a father as well, it didn't take long for any of these guys. Now, we've seen negotiations in the past drag through the summer, and here we are. The season ended Monday, and it's Friday, and just about everybody's got everything done. You surprised that it went that fast? I do know that it's kind of changed a little bit how it's working now and how the money structure works. But are you surprised it all happened that fast?
No, not at all, because, you know, just 2 years ago they moved up the deadline to try to make it faster. And then when the draft changed the way it is now, things are going to happen fast, because you're going to know very quick. I mean, used to you were selected, but then they could give you whatever they wanted to give you in that round. So every round was negotiated out. Today, it's not that way. So guys are going to come to terms pretty quick. The only guys that will take a while would be, like, say, Mike Strentz, anybody that Dex Kerstad last year that fell out of the draft, that now they're open to everybody now. They're technically a free agent. So what these teams will do now is they'll go around, try to sign all their signees, their picks, and then pool their money back up on what they have left available, go back to their boards, look and see who's on these boards, and then go back out again. Those will be the longest ones to come to terms. But for somebody that's been drafted, with the setup the way it is now, it's going to happen pretty quick.
With 7 players, now a few of them were seniors, but with 7 players there, plus the seniors that you did have, there are going to be a lot of new faces on this club next year. I want to ask, though, just about a couple of them that are eligible to come back. I know Tyler Girouard's got his degree. He has a year of eligibility left. What I've kind of gathered all year was that he was going to go ahead and jump into the workforce. Now, he can change his mind. I mean, he's got every right to come back and play if he wants to. Do you know where he sits right now with that?
Right now he made a decision that when he entered school that he was going to play 4 years. And if the draft didn't come calling, he was going to get his degree and get into start his life. The unique thing about this thing is some kids, once they not drafted, it's easy for them to go on and start their life because they had been playing a long time. I'm not saying this case with just Tyler, but you see it a lot where that's what they're playing for. They're playing to get drafted. Then you also have kids that have a very good head on their shoulder, like Tyler, who's going to get into the workforce and move up the ladder. Those kind of guys like that, they're not going to always just stick around to play a game, to maybe try to get a less than 3% chance. They fully understand. Every kid's different. Like Chase Lambin, you're going to have to take the uniform off of him. I mean, they'll literally have to hold him down and take the uniform off of him. Every player is different. I've had some kids that majored in engineering that signed that I knew weren't going to probably stay there very long. They were going to let them paint a picture, and if it was going to be this, 6, 7, 8 year trek through this, they're for a 3% chance when you have an engineering degree. It's not comparing apples to apples. So every kid is different. Every kid is unique, and you have to let each kid decide what he wants to do. Even some of the seniors toyed over not going, even though they got the chance, because everybody's different. And then also too, what happens when you get a group of kids like we did together, and they're your buddies, and your buddies are all leaving. It's hard. You'll see that a lot because they've been through so much together. They want to leave with those memories. That's how they want to end it. So, we respect each student athlete. We've left the door open for him. But at this point in time, we appreciated what he did. He gave us the opportunity to reuse his financial commitment because he didn't want to hold us hostage, and said that, hey, if I truly desire to come back and want to come back, I've got enough to come back on my own nickel if I want to come back, but I do not want to hold this program hostage. And that is the thing about this team, why I think they're so good, is because they understand servant leadership.
Assuming that Shug just goes ahead and enters the workforce now, that means that if Mike Strentz comes back, that you'll have a catcher, you'll have a shortstop, and you'll have a right fielder in Dylan Butler. All of the other folks, including your 3 guys that were your starting rotation on the weekends, and a lot of your back end guys in the bullpen, all of those guys are going to be gone. You went out and signed 14 players in the fall. You've signed more since then. Very interesting. Here I am already looking forward to next year because I'm curious about what next year's team is going to be. You're going to have so many young kids, and at the same time, as a group, it might be the most talented group of freshmen you guys have ever signed. I mean, you've got some guys who are going to step in, and they're going to adjust right away to college. Some freshmen it takes longer. Now you've added a few junior college kids as well, but you've really leaned heavy on the high schools, and a lot of these kids are going to be frontline guys for you probably.
Well, we did that. That's our recruiting process. When you look behind the plate, it is Thurman's time. So even if Strentz comes to terms, we're protected. We've got a very good catcher that's ready to go behind the plate. Evan Powell's back, so we've got two really good catchers. Evans, Ryan Leonard's. He can move around anywhere. So, but the thing is that Evan entered college as a freshman. Even though he was at LSU, he entered as a freshman. Thurman entered college as a freshman. Our first baseman entered as a freshman. Our second baseman entered as a freshman. Our shortstop entered as a freshman. Our third baseman entered as a freshman. Our right fielder entered as a freshman. And then the mixture of the two junior college outfielders, Austin entered as a freshman. Baronick entered as a freshman. So and we think we got another good mix. And Coach Trahan, Coach Deggs, and I both. I don't think you can forget about. He still had a blueprint on this team. I mean, when you look around and you look at the catcher and the first baseman, the second baseman, the shortstop, the third baseman, the right fielder, you mix that in with what Coach Deggs brought in when he walked in through the door with those three junior college outfielders and Plitt. Those were four great junior college signs that he brought in Kerstad, Adams, and Harrison. And Harrison was a unique one. I mean, not Harrison, but you look at Adams, they closed the doors on him. So that was kind of just a luck thing for us. He'd have spent another year at his junior college. So I think when you can get the mix good, and I think we got another good mix. I think we got a lot of good crop of freshmen that are talented. We got a lot of strength. We got a lot of speed. We got a lot of athletes. And now we can try to put them into this system that we have now where we really, 2.5 years ago, changed some things internally and really teach leadership because we feel that's one of the things that's gone by. And then the second thing is reteaching them on how to compete. And so we look forward to this fall. A lot of people are going to look on paper and not feel real good. But the bottom line is that we have a lot of talent coming in. We've got a good system, a good structure set up. It's just going to be now these kids getting acclimated to the bar being raised so high and everybody understanding that every year is a different year. I love Coach Saban's, when they interview him after every national championship game, they start talking about the next year, and he stops them and says, next year's a new year. I mean, it's going to be a different team. Whether you're coming from a losing season or a national championship, it is going to be a new team, and we'll have to start from scratch. But one thing I do like is we got a good mix of athletes, good mix of strength and speed, good mix of JC versus high school, and they've watched. We had almost 13 of our players, recruits, in all weekend through these super regionals and regionals. So they're seeing where the bar is. We got guys coming in that have had high bars. I mean, Barb, two guys coming in from Barb that their team's number one in the nation. Okay, so they won a state championship. We got two kids coming in from St. Thomas More. Coach Perkins, a great job he's done there. Their bars raised high. I mean, you got a second round, I think, or a first round catcher just signed in the big league. So, we're getting guys in from very good programs. Joe Trawhall won the state championship, and all the burden on his team, believe me, not to take away from any of the other kids that played for him, but that size school, the burden was on him. He shouldered the burden every day and got him to a state championship. So that's what I like about what we have coming in. And if we stay fixed, that, it's a new year and they have to forge their own character and forge their own thing. Last year was the beards. We're not going to let them walk through the gate with beards because that's that was forged. I remember coming out of Omaha the next year, guys were showing up to the field the first week of practice with dyed hair. Well, no, that was forged. So this team will have to forge its own path. But I like what's coming in. I like the talent, the strength, the speed, and the mix of the JC versus high school.
A couple of your signees are high school All-Americans.
Mm-hmm.
One of your signees was drafted.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a status on him? Are they negotiating, or has he made a decision?
Well, I don't want to speak for them. It's their personal business, but I do believe they understand the importance of coming to college at this point in time.
Okay. I'll leave that at that. Okay. Now, when you did your recruiting in your spring signing period, did you anticipate who you might lose and recruit accordingly, or are you in a situation right now where you may want to go ahead and see if you can find another player or two?
No, we like where we're at. What we did was we forecasted before the fall started the pro guys that we thought would possibly be the hottest guys. Then we went out and we signed. We put what we felt were the shores and the tweeners, and we recruited accordingly. Then we came back out as the fall ended and deepened. that's when they start coming to watch. That's when they start coming to have meetings with them, and that's when you can start to see, who's going to be maybe where. And so then that's when we went out and tried to pick up, one or two or three more guys at that point in time, and we're pretty much, on the nose. I mean, I think we missed it by two. Milhorn, and there's still a chance that somebody wouldn't try to give him a chance as a free agent. And then Mike. I mean, those are really the only two guys that we missed on, and yet Mike was called many times during the draft. So there is still an opportunity that he could go as a free agent if that's what he wants to do. So, but we felt we were okay catching-wise with Thurman. We think it's his time. And then we had Powell. So we really didn't need to go out and get a catcher. What we really needed to do is bring in arms, which we did, bring in one or two position players, and then make sure that we bring in a couple outfielders. And we got, we think, everything that we needed.
Speaking of Greg Milhorn,
yes.
Do you expect to see him back here? And if he does not sign a professional contract as a free agent, do you expect to see him here next year?
I think he will. I mean, we think he wants to return and try to, come back. He's got a lot of opportunities now. Hopefully, we talked about leaving last year behind him and starting from scratch. A lot of guys have tough years. I mean, he's not the only guy that can have a tough year in this game in baseball. I mean, it can happen. So we'll see. He made a 4.0, so he does care about his school. He wasn't a guy that was just trying to play pro ball. So there is an opportunity, for him. We talked about it, and each player have the right to make their own decision on what they want to do. But he does feel at this point in time that he wants to return and get this taken care of.
You are, and as you said just a minute ago, you talked about the fact that you had to bring some arms in, and there's some guys that you're going to, but you're also going to return some arms. I want to say that there's 7 or 8 guys that a couple of them redshirted this year with Guidry and Guidry, and some didn't get a lot of action. Like Connor Toops and
we'll bring Toops back and Riley Cooper from the left side, and both those guys I think are going to be okay. I think they got caught behind just a lot of good arms and a lot of older arms, and then on the right side you're going to bring back Bazaar. We'll bring back both Guidrys, Charpentier, who you did see get some time, and Zombreaker and Anderson. And I really believe all these guys will be okay. I think they just got caught behind just a lot of good older arms. And as we went down the stretch, we told them up front that we were going to lean on these older arms in these difficult times. And that next year, it's going to come back to you because you're going to be an older arm eventually.
Yeah, well, in a lot of cases, your older arms are going to be redshirt freshmen and sophomores.
Yes.
What about in the junior college ranks? Did you guys? I don't even know if you signed any junior college pitchers, or were they all freshmen?
No, we have a couple junior college guys. Eric Carter's going to be one that we signed that we can kind of talk about, but we do have a couple other very good arms that'll be coming in when they come in under the out-of-state fee waiver. We can't speak about them because there's not a national letter of intent signed. So
there's also a young man in Texas who happens to be a pitcher.
That's right.
There's no letter of intent on him because he's a full academic guy.
Right.
And so there is no NLI, but I know you expect to see him as well.
Yes.
But we can't mention their names because there's no letter of intent. When they get to campus, then we can talk about them.
We can do that
when they enroll in school.
Yes, and also too, we've got 5 2015s already committed. So, we're already looking ahead and making sure that we continue to bring good athletes into here. So that's one nice thing that this season, this run has made. A lot of these guys signed in November. They had saw last year's run.
Right.
But then as this year's run went on, a lot of the guys have already signed except for the late guys we picked up. So that's one thing that has helped us with this run is we've been able to commit 15s at an earlier pace like we did BT when we were able to get him as a sophomore.
Speaking of Blake Trahan, today the Brooks Wallace list was narrowed to 3. He is one of the 3 finalists, young man from North Carolina State and a young man from Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Are the other 2. When you're getting down to the final 3, There's one thing to have a list. There's another thing to be in the final three.
No
and
doubt.
he's a couple of All-America teams. I know that some of the guys with some of those baseball magazines like Perfect Game and Collegiate Baseball, Baseball America, they just love Blake Trahan, and of course, we do too. But God, isn't that neat? Three guys left, and he's one of them.
Well, and again, I think you got to give a lot of credit again to Coach Trahan and Coach Brooks Batto. I mean, they were doing a camp, and he came to it, a fielding camp. They were both infielders, both went on to play professional baseball. And when he came in, I never forget this. They came across the street that day and said, we need to try to get this kid now. And I said, well, how old is he? They said he's just a sophomore, but we got to offer him now, And so we called the parents and made the offer and everything, and we were fortunate enough that he committed verbally, of course, and then hung on to his verbal commitment all the way to the end. So now we get a first off this team. We got a guy that's on Team USA, and we've had so many firsts. I mean, B.J. Ryan made the All-Star game when he got to the big leagues. Luke Roy might make the All-Star team this year, and now we've got a guy on Team USA. So that was all our whole goal when we started, was to try to play bigger than we were and be better than what people think we should be. And so that's what's great about him. The one thing him and I talked about in his exit meeting was, to enjoy the summer. I mean, you go and play against the world, not just summer baseball. But the one thing we want you to do is don't think when you return you have to saddle the burden of this year's team, and get it back to Omaha on your back. That we want you to come back in and make sure you understand that you've got to be a piece of this puzzle and not let the media, all of what you've accomplished now, try to saddle you down for your probably last year before the draft.
You actually had that happen in 2001 with a couple of guys. There weren't very many guys returning from the 2000 going into 2001, but because they were all real big contributors to your team, it was a situation where maybe some folks, whether they were fans or whoever, maybe expected them to suddenly become supermen. When the fact of the matter is they were a piece of a nine guy lineup, or a piece of a pitching staff that they were surrounded by other good guys, and it didn't necessarily mean that they were going to go out just because they were a year older and be even better than they were the year before.
No, I agree. That's why I really believe this, that you got to start out understanding that every year is a new year. You cannot pull from the previous year, because it is a new team, it's new leadership, it's new people, and you can get one. It's like having a little tiny pebble in your shoe. It's not it's not a big rock or a boulder, but you walk around. Don't take long to walk around with it to bother you. You can get one guy like that in your clubhouse, and your clubhouse cannot be what it was the year before. A lot of this is a mixture of not only just talent, but guys that really fit in, really trust each other, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I agree. And then you losing some guys is some protection. I mean, when you hit, in between an Adams and a Conrad, now can we surround you with those type guys next year in that lineup? Now it's going to be Butler's turn and Greg Davis's turn and Thurman's turn, and Powell in the middle of that order mixed with the other guys that are coming in. So every year can make a difference,
You actually just brought up some. We don't want to act like you got no cupboard here, because you had some guys who weren't in the lineup every day that made significant contributions to your team, and Powell and Davis, and Joe Robbins missed most of the year, but he's now he's going to be a third-year guy, and he's going to come back, and Kyle Clement will be back, and guys who got Thurman, guys who had a chance to play during the season, make a contribution to this team. They maybe didn't get 200 at-bats, but they got some important at-bats, and they're going to be another part of your leadership next year, and now perhaps in a much bigger role.
Well, I think what's going to change is people are going to look at paper, and when you see the draftees, the seniors that you left, and it can make you believe that. And look, and reality says we do need to look at that, because look at what's leaving the locker room. These guys could be conceivably talked about as one of the better teams in the history of the school. And then this weekend, I guarantee you, through the broadcast of the World Series, you're going to hear our name come up more than once. And that's, I think, how good these guys were, is that somebody's going to still talk about you. So, you got to understand that when you go into next fall and understand where we're at and being able to get these kids to make sure that they understand that, this was a process for us to get there. And we got very close through this process. Now what we have to do is just start the process again and see where it takes us.
You going to watch?
I don't know. It's the baseball person in me is gonna. Especially Ole Miss. I think I'm going to catch myself watching Ole Miss. But it's so funny with the World Series. You can turn your back to the TV, and when it's Omaha. The sound of the bat, the announcers, you just know it's Omaha. And it's going to hurt. I mean, I was at my mom and dad's, the next night after to go visit them. I hadn't seen them through all this run, and the news came on, and I got up and went in another room. I knew we lost. I didn't want to see it again. So I don't know. I really don't know. I think the baseball in me is probably going to draw me back to the TV, but it's going to hurt when I hear the ping of that bat. They got microphones under the bases, and you can hear the game, and it's distinct. I mean, it's Omaha. You don't have to be looking at the TV. So I don't know. The jury's still out.
Ragin Cajun baseball coach Tony Robichaux, our guest here this afternoon on Bird's Eye View. Final segment, we'll have some final thoughts on 2014 and a couple of other things before we get out of here. This is Bird's Eye View. Jay Walker on ESPN 1420 and